X and Y intercepts pre-college. All right, this is the final step before we get to actually graphing these things. So we factor the numerator and denominator, we write its lowest terms, we find vertical asymptotes, we find holes, we state the domain, we've determined if there are any horizontal asymptotes or if there are any slant asymptotes, and finally we're ready for the X and Y intercepts. So to find the x-intercept, you set the numerator equal to 0 and solve. To find the y-intercepts, you plug 0 in for all x values and solve. All right, so two separate procedures here to find x and y-intercepts. Now, first of all, we write these as coordinates. The x-intercepts are going to be 0, comma, some number. Oh, I'm sorry, I have that completely backwards. It's going to be some number, comma 0, because if you're an x-intercept, that means you're on the x-axis, and the points on the x-axis have x values, but they have y values of 0 because they're not up and down at all. And the y-intercepts have coordinates of 0, comma, some number, because they are on the y-axis that has a numerical value, and the x value is 0 because you're not side to side at all. So that's how we're going to write these down. Now, when we say set numerator equal to 0 and plug 0 in for x's, this all happens after the factoring and simplifying. So after the factor, that's really sloppy. Let me rewrite that a little bit neater for you. I think you got it. But so this is all after factor and simplify. Where like when we did horizontal and slant asymptotes, it was to the original problem before any factoring and stuff like that. But when you do x and y intercepts, it's after you simplify. So my first example here, this has nothing to factor, x plus 3 over x minus 7, so I could just jump right into what I have here. So to do the x-intercept, what I do is I take the numerator and set it equal to 0. So that'd be x plus 3 equals 0, which turns into x equals negative 3, which gives me the coordinate negative 3, 0 for my x-intercept. So whatever you end up with as x equals, that then is your number, comma, 0 for the x-intercept. For the y-intercept, you take your expression, which is, again, after factoring and simplifying, and replace all your x's with 0. Kind of like when we solved for the holes, like you got the x value for the hole, you plug the x value in to get the y value for the hole. Same thing, we're going to plug 0 in and get the y value for the hole, because we can replace x with 0 because your y-intercepts have x values of 0. So that would then be 0 plus 3 over 0 minus 7. It's just taking this and subtracting your, replacing your x values with zeros. So 0 plus 3 over 0 minus 7 is 3 over negative 7, which gives me a y-intercept of 0, comma, negative 3/7. And so that's how you do y-intercepts. All right, let's do one more example. And again, in class, we're going to do everything. We're going to do domain, vertical asymptotes, slant asymptotes, horizontal asymptotes, holes, everything. But for the purpose of keeping these videos short, let's just take a look at the intercept part, and then we'll add it to the parts we already know. You don't need to see me solve everything a bunch of times. In the next video, when we get into graphing, I will go through everything all at once, so you have a video where it's all done in one shot. But all right, so the intercepts come after the factoring. So what can we do? We can factor here. This would be x plus 6 over x plus 2. And then I can simplify the x plus 6's, which is going to tell me that I have a hole at negative 6, and that's going to be a restriction on my domain and all that stuff. But for now, let's just do the intercepts part. What's left over is x plus 2 over nothing, so it's just x plus 2. All right, and now to do the x-intercepts, I take the numerator, which is this, because this is really over 1. So the numerator is x plus 2. And I set it equal to 0 and solve. Gives me x equals negative 2, which gives me a intercept at negative 2, 0. And the y-intercepts, I take my simplified expression, the x plus 2, and replace the x's with 0. And so I just get 0 plus 2, which is 2, which gives me an intercept at not 2, 0, 0, 2. So remember, x-intercept is number comma 0, y-intercept is 0 comma number. And if you ever get confused, just think about the points on those axes themselves, what they look like, and that'll confirm that to you. So save the best for last. I think this is probably the easiest of our 8 steps total here that we're doing. I think the asymptotes are probably the trickiest. You know, slant asymptote requires long division, but it doesn't happen every time. Horizontal asymptote is pretty easy, just comparison of powers. Holes happen when, you know, something crosses out like we did here with the x plus 6. I would plug negative 6 in here. I'd end up with negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. So I'd have negative 6, negative 4 for a hole. The vertical asymptotes are things that don't cross out, like this x minus 7 did not cross out, so I'd have a vertical asymptote at x equals 7. And the domain is a restriction on both of those things, holes and vertical asymptotes, and we use interval notation for that. There's definitely some factoring involved in this topic, in this chapter. I'll try to keep the factoring pretty simple for you. And then the intercepts, and the intercepts really aren't too bad, you know, just solve the top, set it equal to 0, that's your x-intercept, and plug in zeros, and what's left over, that's your y-intercept. So I think that's one of the easier things. Put it all together and put it on a graph. That's what we're going to see in the next video. See ya.